My name is Emily LeMay, and I'm a program coordinator here at the Department of Solid Waste. I'm going to be your meeting host tonight, and I will be introducing our Director of Solid Waste, Paul Sacco, and Program Manager of Recycling and Outreach Program, Stephanie Watson, down the line. But this is the second of 3 public input meetings to discuss potential revisions to the Solid Waste Ordinance, and our next in-person meeting will be held this Wednesday, July 19th at 6 p.m. This virtual meeting is being recorded and it will be made available on our website at pinellas.gov/SW Ordinance. Okay, before we get started, I'll just like to go over some quick Zoom tips, how you'll be able to give your feedback and ask questions. So we'll be utilizing a few different ways to share feedback and ask questions in Zoom. First, you can type your question into the Q&A window, and second, you can raise your hand to then be unmuted and verbally ask your question. And we're going to have 2 different Q&A breaks tonight, so you can ask your questions at 2 different times. If you're on a computer or using the Zoom app on your mobile device, you can use the Q&A feature by clicking on the Q&A icon from your menu as shown on this screen. Then you can type your question into the box and click send. And if you'd rather speak to ask your question or voice your feedback, you'll first need to raise your hand to alert me that you'd like to speak. So if you dialed in on a phone, you'll need to dial *9 to raise your hand. And if you're on your computer or on the Zoom app on your phone, you can click the raise hand icon in your menu bar as shown on this screen. After I give you permission to speak and unmute you, you'll have to unmute yourself by either clicking unmute, or if you're on your phone, if you dialed in, you'll have to dial *6 to unmute yourself. Otherwise, a pop-up will show in your menu bar that says unmute if you're on your computer. You can click that as well. And as with any meeting, please try to keep your questions and comments brief so that we can get to everyone in a timely manner. And our first Q&A break will be for questions related to how our current integrated solid waste management system works. And then the second Q&A break will be for questions and comments related to the proposed solid waste ordinance revisions. And all the questions that we receive, we'll be going through them in the order that they are received. All right, so we have a poll, and we're actually going to be doing 3 separate polls throughout this meeting. So this first poll will be a test run. So I'm going to pop this on the screen. And it should pop up right there on your screen. I'm getting some results. Okay, great, it's working. So just let me know where you're tuning in from. Are you a resident of unincorporated Pinellas County? Do you live in one of our municipalities, in our towns or cities? Or maybe you don't live in Pinellas County and you're just interested in learning more about our ordinance revisions. I'll give it another second here. Awesome, we've got some great participation, so thank you all. I'm going to close the poll. And it looks like most of the people on the meeting today live in one of the towns or cities of Pinellas County. So welcome, thanks for joining in. And then the second most number of people participating today live in unincorporated Pinellas County. Thanks again, I'm glad you're here. This will be a very interesting meeting for you all. And then about 17% of us don't live in Pinellas County. So there those results are. Okay, so stop that. All right, so we're going to have 2 other polls during this meeting, and we're also going to have an interactive Google Jamboard. So don't freak out if you've never heard what that is. I'll go over it and I'll share instructions for how to access the Jamboard and then how to actually participate in that. And that'll be during our second half of the meeting where we're going to be discussing the actual proposed ordinance revisions. All right, so I'm now going to turn over the mic to our Director of Solid Waste, Paul Sacco. And if you do have any questions about what Paul is discussing during his presentation, please type them into the Q&A box or raise your hand once we reach the Q&A break. And again, you'll have another opportunity to ask those questions or provide feedback on the proposed ordinance revisions during the second Q&A break. So Paul.
Thank you, Emily.
All you.
Good evening, everybody. And again, we appreciate you all tuning in and trying to learn a little bit about what we're doing with our solid waste ordinance. So just want to give you a little bit of background. We really can't move forward if we don't understand where we are and maybe where we've been. So solid waste, municipal solid waste, garbage, all kind of synonymous. We work with an integrated management system, which really involves a lot of different components of garbage and recycling. So if you live in an incorporated area, city or town in Pinellas County, you're receiving garbage and recycling services from your municipality, either through the municipality's own team and resources, or in some cases, it's contracted out to a private service, or in other cases, it's even a hybrid between the two. Some may provide garbage collection and contract out recycling, and some may be a hybrid for both. And when that's for municipality, you're actually paying either through a utility bill, or in some cases you may even be paying as a non-ad valorem assessment. But I think most of the municipalities are doing it as part of their utility bill. So you'd see water, sewer, and garbage collection. And with that, you're paying for the actual bin itself, or the bins, your collection, the transportation to move that material down the road and to bring it either to the solid waste complex, or if it's recycling, it's going to a private material recycling facility, or we call it a MRF, for processing, sorting, and then put out, into the market to be used again. Materials that are coming to the solid waste system are usually handled for disposal. When it comes here, we don't do any recycling. We're having to deal with that material in the form of either yard waste, tires, materials that are going to our waste energy facility, or last option would be actually putting it into our landfill. We prefer to incinerate the waste as much as possible. That's because we can reduce the volume of that waste by 90%. So for every 10 trucks that are coming to the facility, nine trucks, or the materials of 9 trucks, are actually being incinerated. And that material is being converted into heat to drive steam to make electricity. And we make enough electricity on any given day to power 40 to 45,000 homes in Pinellas County. That 1 truck remaining usually comes in the form of ash out the back of the facility, where the materials are run through magnets and eddy current devices, where we pull the metals, either ferrous or non-ferrous, out. And then the balance of the ash that's left over is taken to our landfill, where we're using that for cover, to cover other materials that are being landfilled, where it's being put aside to be used for purposes later. So that's how it's working for the incorporated areas of Pinellas County. If you live in the unincorporated areas of Pinellas County, it's what's called open competition. And right now we have a series of private haulers who provide municipal solid waste services. And those residents have the option of picking and choosing which one of those services they would like to hire to provide that service. Those services also, or those contractors or service providers also are required to provide you recycling service at an option, and you pay for that service separately. So the solid waste management team here is responsible for providing criteria so that we can license those haulers to provide recycle or waste management services for residential. And like we said, you have those options of which service provider you would like to choose. And again, you're paying for the collection, the bin, the transportation, and then the disposal costs when they bring it here to the solid waste system. So all solid waste materials that is generated through county ordinance has to be brought to the Department of Solid Waste complex here in the center, which we're located at 118th Avenue and 28th Street. And so we receive about 1.2 million tons of garbage per year, and we incinerate probably close to 1 million tons of that. So we're landfilling the balance, or we have some that's yard waste, where we actually grind up and either provide that free to those that want to come and get it, or we put it out to the parks and you can pick it up at the park system, or we use some of it actually for daily cover, just like we do for our landfill operations. So I want to talk a little bit about our waste to energy capacity. And right now in the year 2020, when we did our master plan, we were under capacity. And now that we worked through that master plan and we were able to see through population, the amount of garbage that's being generated, we know that in the year 26, in or around, could be a little bit earlier, could be a little bit later, we will be at capacity for the waste energy facility, which is about 1 million tons per year. If we were to do nothing, if we were to continue on the path that we are and watching our population increase as it's projected, then in the year 2050, you'll see that we're way over capacity and we will be putting much more garbage into the landfill. And that's important to know because our master plan, our vision is really to have zero waste to landfill by the year 2050. So we need to do some things to change that. And one of the things that we're looking for really is to reduce what we generate, reuse what we have, recycle those things, and then really disposal when it comes here is the last thing that we want to be dealing with. So we do know that in dealing with waste that comes here, the best technology out there, it's proven, is the incineration of waste and converting that to power for electrical energy to power homes, you know, in our community and in our region. So if we move on, our landfill capacity, right now, our existing capacity is about 80 years. So again, if we do nothing, you know, when we carry on, in 80 years, we'll be out of landfill capacity. Now, that's a problem for us. It's a problem because if we reach capacity, our only option would be to move that garbage and transport it out of county. We know that we're a built-out county. We're never going to have another landfill within Pinellas County. Nobody is going to want that in our backyard. And we just couldn't afford it. We wouldn't get one. We wouldn't have one be permitted. And if we reach capacity and we had to move that material outside, we could expect to pay probably in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 times what it would be than what it would cost just to bring the materials here, incinerate it, and put it in our landfill. So we know that we need to do things differently. And the things that we're talking about doing are generational. We're having to make decisions now that are going to affect not only your children, but your children's children. And that's big thinking, but we need to get that and codify it. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So when you look at long-term, it's part of the 2050 plan, we need to look at population. So based on the projections that were done in 2020, you can see that when you roll up our permanent population, our seasonal population, our tourism population, you know, we were under, you know, 1 million people or so. When you roll that up and look at moving forward, we're over 1 million people, and we're going to be gaining possibly 200,000 people over the next 30 years. Now, when you look at that and you take into account a single family home generates about 1 ton of garbage per year, you know, I don't know how many houses that would be. You know, we're tending to go more vertical, but we do know that when you're talking about 200,000 people you're probably looking in the neighborhood of 100 to 200,000 tons more of trash per year, which equates to about a month's worth of garbage. And we don't have that capacity anymore after 2026 with our waste energy facility. So all of that garbage would be landfilled, which again, if we do nothing, would accelerate the life of that landfill. And if we were to not recycle like we do today, you could be taking about a generation's worth of trash, you know, or I'm sorry, you'd be accelerating the life of that landfill by a generation, which would be about 25 years, and reducing that down to probably 55, 58 years or so. So recycling is a very big portion of what we do and why we do it. And it's important why we continue to do it. So I talked about our master plan. The master plan was done in 2020. It was presented to our board of county commissioners and they adopted the plan. I invite you all to go to the link that's there and review the plan. It's very informative. It's certainly user-friendly. It comes with a host of recommendations. We reached out to you as the public. We reached out to all the stakeholders in the community because trash touches everybody. And when we put that master plan together, it was very encompassing and very engaging. And that's our roadmap. Anything that we do at the Department of Solid Waste, the first question we ask is, what's the master plan say about this? I mean, it's part of our culture and it's just how we operate, which is why we always go back to that. One of the areas in the master plan of the recommendations was to go back and revisit our ordinance. Our ordinance hasn't been touched since the 80s when the waste energy facility was put online. So that's why it's time for a refresh. And again, that's why we're here again this evening to kind of talk through some of those things that need to be refreshed, and then why we're asking or engaging you on you know what your views are for some of the things that we have outlined to kind of discuss this evening. We have a great potential for recycling opportunities. We know that there's two types of waste composition studies that are done routinely here. We have one that we look at the entire, you know, composition of trash that comes to the facility. And we know from those studies that 60 to 70% of the materials that are delivered here can actually be recycled or reused in some form or fashion. And you can see a breakout of what those opportunities look like, whether it's recyclable packaging or paper, recycling containers, and you look at our compostables, which are typically your organics, which is mostly food waste, yard waste, and in some cases, tires. So we have a great opportunity to continue to do better than what we do today. And we do good. I mean, or I say do well, about 50% of what is generated in Pinellas County is recycled, but we need to do better than that. We know that the recycled materials that are brought to a material recycle facility have contamination in them. And contamination by definition is anything that really doesn't belong in your recycling bin that people have put there. And from our most recent recycling composition study, I think as a county, we were around 19.5%. Not bad, but we certainly can do better. And I think Stephanie's going to talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. So that's kind of where we are, maybe a little bit of where we've been. So if you have any questions about that, it's important that you understand that before we move into the next areas of tonight's session. So if you have any of those questions, go ahead and post them, you know, in the question area, and then we'll get to it the best we can. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Emily, and she's going to take you through the next section of tonight's presentation. So again, thank you for participating tonight.
All right, thank you, Paul. We actually did get some questions in the Q&A. And again, if you have any other questions and you do want to read them out loud, say them verbally, you can raise your hand. And if you're if you dialed in on a phone, you'll have to click star or dial *9 to raise your hand on your phone. So the first question we had was, where can I find a recording of this video? And Brian actually answered that for you. So you can go to pinellas.gov/SW ordinance, and it will be included on there in the next few days. We're also putting additional information about the ordinance revision process on that site. And then we just got a few more questions in the chat. Why do we allow more multi-unit complexes? Our quality of life will only decline with wastewater, water, traffic, EM services, etc. The master plan needs to rewrite that does not pander to developers.
So I'll take a shot at that. I don't think we're talking about the master plan there. I think we're talking about our comprehensive plan, which really is controlled by the planning organizations of Pinellas County. They're the ones that would actually dictate the zoning, the land use, and things of that nature. We will certainly take this information and pass that on to, those departments, just so that we know that you're being heard, and we can make sure that that information is being passed on. Next question about why are we stuck on waste energy? We just know waste energy as a technology has the biggest bang for the buck as far as volume reducing technologies. And why, I don't want to say we're stuck on that. We would be open to other technologies, but we need to deal with our trash real time. And I understand there's many people out there that don't agree with incineration. I can tell you that if there was another technology, we would certainly look at that. But we generate, we do generate emissions. We're not green, but we are, a reusable type option. And we will be open to looking at any of that. I see that there's a carbotura.com projects. We will look at that. But right now, we know that that's the best technology that we're familiar with to reduce the volume of trash, which we need to do so that we don't fill up our landfill, which is really our master plan's vision. Next question I see up there is the county considering building their own MRF. It's a possibility. We're actually taking the input from this information session and going to the board and presenting on the ordinance. And part of the information that we would receive from stakeholder meetings like this would help us dictate whether we would get into that business or not. And that's really all I can say right now. We're letting the data kind of take us on the journey for this portion of that when we're talking about recycling. Let's see, next question, the assumption on 200,000 tons per year for incremental 1 ton per household, which I assume is more than the average of 1 person per household. That's correct. Well, we have other types of materials that are coming in, that's coming in from businesses, yard waste, and whatnot. So it's more than, you have construction and demolition debris. There's a lot of materials that are coming to this campus. It can come in the form of boats, furniture. It's not just your typical, municipal solid waste that's being picked up in a container. So I hope that answers your question there. Environmental justice issues, would expanding waste energy be an option, preferable, and is likely to pass public approval? We are what's called a qualified facility, and being a qualified facility under the federal rules means you need to be under 80 megawatts or less. And that's pretty much where we are right now. We would not be able to expand our facility on our given footprint without getting, waivers or variations to that. And I'm not sure that's an option for us at this point. Is it something that we can look at? Yes. And we may, as we look at long-term solutions, and our hands may be forced to kind of look at that. But But right now, that's not one that we're actively pursuing. And I think that next question is the same type of question. Next one is recycling still being shipped to China for processing, or are we mostly burning it with other trash? Like I said, if the materials are coming here in a mixed load, we don't have the ability to separate or source separate that. The materials that go to a MRF, there are, markets for that, for those materials. So if it's going to a MRF, I would say it's going to the markets that MRF actually has. So I wouldn't think at that point the materials would be burned as trash. Next up, does the county plan to provide compost bins like the city of St. Pete did? Right now, we're just taking information from you all. And if that's something that you would like us to consider, then I would tell you that is something that we would look at. But right now, that's not in our master plan, but I'm not saying that's not something that we would not look at, but we're looking for your information tonight to see if that's something. Since we have lots of development that are eligible place of developments to recycle, would it be feasible to have pickup at each development? That's what's considered multifamily, or not single family. So multifamily is anything that is 5 units or more. And I think any new development that's being built has to have recycling as part of their development. The older developments do not, and it's usually because there's not enough room for those. And I'm not so sure we would be grandfathering. I think those folks are actually grandfathered in, honestly. So I'm not sure we can do a lot with that. In areas like that, I would say it would be up to those developments on whether they want to do something different. It is optional for you to bring your materials either to a drop-off point to one of the areas that are around the county. We have a host of those that are actually listed on our website. You can go there and see where they are. So I think that's all I can offer. I don't know, Stephanie, you have anything you want to offer there?
You covered that. The Where Does It Go search tool would have options, and we can provide that to participants in our email follow-up. Okay,
thank you. Next question, is the incinerator paid for? So yes, that is bought and paid for, and we actually just made a $240 million investment into that facility that's also paid for. That will extend the life of that facility another 25 years or so. So yes to that. Next question, does the county have a plan to educate residents on best practices for recycling, given that contamination ultimately diverts recycling to landfill? Stephanie, you want to take that one?
Yes, I do. So we are working with our municipalities on standardizing recycling education. And I agree with you that we want to reduce contamination because we don't want our good recyclable materials to be sent for disposal. So we have our 24 municipalities, and then we have our 8 residential haulers and unincorporated areas. And we do have several ways to connect with them. We have the Pinellas Partners in Recycling group, and we also have the Solid Waste Technical Management Committee. And we are actively working on public education with the municipalities.
Okay. I'm looking at the next 3 or 4 questions, Stephanie. They're probably in your wheelhouse if you want to take a shot at them.
Yes. So would opening a community composting location be helpful in reducing volume? The community composting locations that we're aware of there's 4 or 5, maybe 6 municipalities that have home composting options. And you can find information about those in our Where Does It Go search tool. And then we also promote the community composting programs like Make Soil in our Where Does It Go search tool. So our role there is to educate the community about what is available. And we do that through our Where Does It Go search tool. And we'll share that link with you after the webinar is over. There are cities that have required multifamily buildings to adopt recycling bins. Los Angeles, for example, this includes older existing housing stock. I understand. I know Paul shared that question or response about the Florida legislature has a statute that new buildings are required to provide receptacles for recycling. I think that's somewhere where we can make inroads, but I know that it's a challenge with older buildings. So we are aware of that and we are logging that comment. So thank you. Question from Jeffrey Cool. Paul, we got this question at the in-person meeting last week. Do you think we should go back to resident sorting recyclables versus single stream to lower cost and limit contamination for both municipalities and unincorporated? We talked about that. The municipal programs are set up with their equipment and their collection is single stream. That's pretty much what we have in Pinellas County. We have our MRFs are set up for single stream. We did consider that as part of our master plan, but we don't necessarily see ourselves going back to individual sorting. Some programs like Gulfport and St. Pete do have some separation of materials at their drop-off sites, and we support them in doing that. Let's see. Paul, there's a question about the Seminole Lake Park with recycling drop-off locations. I can tell you that we are looking at areas that might be suitable locations for a new recycling drop-off in Seminole. Do you have a cadence to updating the master plan as circumstances change in the county reactive to development?
Yeah, so for that one there, I would tell you that we would look to update our master plan probably around every 4 or 5 years. And we would take into account development and whatnot that we are seeing, and then the other performance data around, what the master plan was done. So that's a yes, and that's great. I like the vision and looking out like that. So thank you for that question. And then the next one, again, we will look at Carbatura. So I appreciate that information. I'm not familiar with that, but that's something that we will look at. Next question, are there plans for unincorporated residents to be able to have single provider or be included in waste management contracts for other cities to make it more affordable? So this kind of hinges or touches on what we call franchise collection. So we need to be careful about this. So, the incorporated areas, cities and towns, when they incorporate, they're franchised just by their incorporation. So that means they provide the service and they have exclusivity on what they can mandate for, everything that's going on within the municipality. The unincorporated area, the only franchised area that we have is the Lealman area. And that's because that was done back in 2014, where we actually contract out. We have a single hauler that provides service to the Lealman community, and it provides recycling as an option. Right now, the way the legislation is written, we're not able to engage or enter into franchise collection for the balance of the unincorporated areas unless we provide at least 3 years notice that we want to get into that game. And then we actually have to negotiate with the existing providers to pay them up to 18 months of their gross receipts because the investments that they've made for the contracts that they have in the unincorporated areas. I would tell you right now, that would be a huge cost that the county really couldn't afford. And in all likelihood, if we were to engage in that, those costs would probably be passed on to you as a customer over a period of time that you would be paying for the county to get into that. So right now, I'm not going to say that that's something that we wouldn't do, but the way that the legislation is written, it's not something that we're looking to do in the short or medium time frame. It would be something that would be much further out, probably in the 20 to 30 year time frame if we needed to get into that business. So I would say right now that answer would be no. Pollutants, what pollutants do you test the bottom and fly ash for? So bottom ash, nothing. The bottom ash really comes out and it's actually combined with the fly ash. what we test for is what's going out the stack. And that is what FDEP requires us to do. And it's a host of things that we need to do. And we control that through many different additives, not to get technical, but, urea, I think we go through bag filter housings, and then we have real-time monitoring that's happening for everything that's going out the stack. And we have to provide stack testing. We provide that on-time monitoring and everything. So in addition to the greenhouse gases, which would be your carbon dioxides and your nitrous, or, they call it NOx gas, NOx type gases. And right now we meet all our permits, and, we never have non-compliant issues, with what's being discharged to the atmosphere as far as, air quality goes. If you're interested for the results of that, you can go to FDEP's website and put in Pinellas plant, and then all those reports are actually there for what is discharged and what are reporting. Next question, given Pinellas, Hillsborough, Manatee counties all have high population counts, are there conversations happening about combined waste management solutions to see what might be the most sustainable? Right now, no. That would be, if I had a choice, I love that line of thinking. And I think to make that happen, you would almost have to set up some type of regional solid waste authority that would take in account all the assets of all those, including Pasco, because there are several waste energy facilities, there are several landfills, and, trash really knows no boundary. For people that live in North Pinellas, in Tarpon, it would be more economically feasible for them to take that trash north of Pasco than it would be to bringing it down to Pinellas. And you could probably make that same case for Hillsborough County, City of Tampa, and in some cases, South County, moving back and forth across the Manatee County. So I think that has merit. We do have discussions. We do have, regional discussions with some of our partner counties. We actually have memorandum of agreements to move some of our trash back and forth in times of crisis, to make some of that happen. But I think we can do better in some of these other areas to see more benefit in what we can do on a regional approach. So I appreciate that question. Thank you. Next one, I heard there are islands offshore from waste. Can we make more fishing piers or other park type use of them? I don't know about any islands, but we do have programs in Pinellas where we have reef programs where we've take, marine friendly materials, usually concrete and such, and we create reefs out there for fishing, for diving tourism or whatnot. We work with Fish and Wildlife and FDEP to permit. I think we have 46 permitted reefs off Pinellas County that we actually monitor and make sure, that they're living and they're doing well. We just did a deployment not too long ago, I think back in April or May. And I think we have one of those maybe every 2 years or so where we collect enough materials and then we have a deployment out to one or more of these reefs. So I don't know anything about islands, but again, we do know about the reefs. Would making recycling mandatory for even certain types help? If so, how can we get this started? We're going to get more into that as we get into the program, so stay tuned with that. Next one, this might be a better question for the next Q&A. Is unincorporated, would the county consider an ordinance that has any HOA contract, solid waste or recycling services within the residents unincorporated areas? So again, we can't require, well, I'm going to say yes to that, and we're going to see where the rest of the program takes us, and moving that forward. So I'm going to let that one go for right now. To clarify, does this discussion apply to Lealman or not? Not for right now. Lealman has franchise collection for solid waste or garbage. If we get into recycling, then yes, this would apply to the Lealman area in the unincorporated area. I'm not seeing anything new coming on. Maybe we have exhausted.
We have one hand raised, so I'll
Okay.
invite them.
Another question just came in. If we reduce the amount of trash going to the solid waste disposal facility by recycling, would that reduce the yearly cost of trash collection?
All right.
I don't know if I can really speak to that. You know, your municipalities and your waste haulers, there's three components. You have the collection piece and transportation piece, and then you have the disposal piece. We only control the disposal piece. So it's possible that the disposal piece may be held constant or reduce a little bit. But I think given the inflationary costs of labor, fuel, the trucks that collect, the bins, I'm not so sure you would actually see a reduced cost in trash just because of recycling more. Probably not in the reality of what we deal with. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, David Lee again. So you're saying the recycling component does apply to us. And I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit further with the container type, maybe that's under discussion, because, you know, as you know, we struggle with trash here. And a percentage of the trash from each time it's collected ends up in our ditches, because the county has decided to use ditches to convey and clean water. And so we would welcome a new tool to get rid of recyclables and trash, but it would have to be a secured rolling container with a lid, or we would just be getting more and more trash into those ditches. Is there anything you can add as far as container type?
I can't right now, David. I mean, we don't even know if it's going to be a reality. If we get great support that that's something that we want to take to the board, and you know they direct us to look at it, we would look at it at that point. I would say it would probably something that has a lid. I don't know that we actually have open containers anymore, but the size of the container and all that, I really can't comment on right now. It's just too early in the game, David. So Emily, you want to move forward?
Yes. So thank you all for your questions, and thank you, Paul and Stephanie, for jumping in and answering those. And Stephanie, now it's your turn.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to touch on the ordinance, that kind of what we've done to look at the ordinance. As Paul mentioned, it's from the 80s. It hasn't been majorly changed, so it's in need of a refresh. So our team here at the Department of Solid Waste has taken a look at the ordinance, and we've looked at what other communities in the US and Canada have done with their solid waste ordinance and kind of gleaning any good ideas that they have. We've logged those. We've talked to our stakeholders, our municipal stakeholders, private haulers, and select county departments earlier this year. And now we're talking to the public about their ideas and thoughts. You'll see that image up on the screen. The Environmental Protection Agency has what they call the waste management hierarchy, or the sustainable materials management hierarchy. And this is EPA's recommendation to facilities like ourselves as the best management practice for managing waste. So it's an order from most preferred to least preferred's at the bottom. The best way that we can manage waste as the Department of Solid Waste is to encourage waste reduction so that waste is not made in the first place, because once it's made, then we have to manage it. Also reuse is up there, reusing something so you're not reusing the new resources. Also recycling and composting, you'll see that's not as preferable as waste reduction. It's great. It's still above energy recovery and landfilling, but it takes resources and time and energy, as we know, and composting. And then, of course, energy recovery, which is waste energy, and then treatment and disposal. Landfilling is the least preferred. And that matches our master plan, which has a vision of zero waste to landfill by 2050. So some of the things that we've done to, look at our ordinance is take outdated definitions and terms and bring them up to match any state or federal terms, get rid of redundancies. So these are some of the things that we're looking to do. We are also looking to focus on waste reduction and recycling programs. So tonight, we're going to talk about your ideas. We're going to share some of the ideas that we have. But when we're talking about following EPA's waste management and hierarchy, one of the things that we thought about doing was organizing the ordinance in the same order that is shown here with EPA's waste management hierarchy. So putting all the reduce and reuse programs sort of in that top piece, and then kind of going down the line. So you'll see we're going to talk about waste reduction programs first, then recycling, and on and on. So that's kind of gives you some idea of our thoughts and our structure there. Lastly, we want to clarify roles and responsibilities. A lot's changed in 30 years. So that's just sort of an overview of kind of what we've done and why we're here. So we do have a team in our department that we call the ordinance team that I've been working together for a year and a half on this to kind of build some framework and some ideas. And the next thing we wanted to talk about was recycling ideas. So that's a big topic for us tonight, and we wanted to get your thoughts on it, especially in recycling in unincorporated areas. We know that the majority of folks on this call from the poll are in incorporated areas, but we still appreciate your ideas on this. So some of the ways that recycling, we know we need to maximize recycling programs. So how do we do that? One of the ways that we can do it is to increase the collection of recyclables in an unincorporated area. So if we want to take the pressure off the waste energy in the landfill, as Paul mentioned, maximizing those recycling programs. One option would be that single family households in unincorporated areas contract directly with a recycling company that provides their garbage. And that cost would be determined by the vendor. Another option would be where, say, there's zones or the franchise model where there's one provider per area, and that company would be contracted to provide recycling services, and the residents would be billed. So those are just some of the ways that could happen and just some ideas. And now, Emily, do we want to talk about the Jamboards?
Yes, so we're going to get some feedback from you all using Google Jamboards. So I'm actually going to open this up right now and just show you how it works. And we can put the link in the chat as well. So you can just go ahead and click it. Let me grab that.
And we are new to using Jamboard, so please be patient with us. We promise you it'll be fun and engaging.
Yeah, so here I'm grabbing the link and put this back up. So you can either go to tinyurl.com/swordinance, or I will type this into the chat. This is the direct link to the Jamboard as well. So once you're here in the Jamboard, you'll note that there are two different pages. So Stephanie covered two different models, if you will. So the private hauler model, and then on the second page, if you use the arrow up top, the one provider per area model or franchise model. So what we'll do is have you go here to the left sidebar. The fourth icon down is a sticky note. So you can type, I'll just put test to show you how it'll look, but you can type any thoughts, comments, feedback, questions that you have and place your sticky note right on the board. And then you can do the same on the next page for the other model. So
You can feel free to add your sticky notes while I'm talking, but just to kind of refresh you, you can click back and forth. But the private hauler model is the model that is currently in the unincorporated areas where a resident would contract directly with their hauler. They may have garbage collection, they may not have recycling collection, but in unincorporated areas to increase recycling, they would contract with their hauler, and the hauler would bill them directly. So what we're looking here for your participation is, what are the challenges and opportunities with this model? What are any questions you might have with this model? And then the same for the next one, if you want to go to that. And if you're in the Jamboard, you can toggle back and forth. So you can see the different screens. You won't necessarily see what Emily has up now, but the next model, which is the franchise model, we're asking for the same types of comments and questions. Or what questions do you have about what this would look like? Any challenges, opportunities? So Emily, what does that sticky note there say?
So this one says, how will you force residents in unincorporated areas to contract with the recycler? And then I just wanted to quickly give a reminder to create a sticky note. You'll go to the left sidebar here. It's the fourth icon down, the sticky note, and then you can type your questions or comments, feedback, any ideas you have about each of these models, and then paste that on the board.
Okay. And Emily, we had one comment that says, I'm getting an error trying to access the Jamboard from my iPhone on the Zoom app. Any help you could offer there? Maybe Brian?
I would say try going to your browser on your phone and typing in tinyurl.com/SW Ordinance and see if that works.
Thank you. And then we had another comment that says, I would like to see this mandatory or given an incentive to encourage recycling. And that's on the private hauler model. And on the one provider per area franchise model, would this model be for the Lealman area? And I think, Paul, you addressed that, saying possibly, right?
Yeah, we don't know what model. I mean, that's why we're engaging the public. We don't know what model we would go with, or what the board would like to move forward with, I guess I should say.
And this would be a good time to share, and I was going to mention this, but what are we going to do with your feedback? You're probably wondering. So we're going to take the feedback that we've gotten from all the meetings. We've also been getting messages, emails. We're going to take feedback from residents and compile that, organize that. And then we're going to share that with the Board of County Commissioners at a meeting, a work session meeting next month already, or in August. And then the board is going to have an opportunity to ask questions. And then based on the direction that they provide, then we may be given the direction to put some more content around these ideas, more meat on the bone, and then bringing that back to the public and the stakeholders for more input. So this won't be the last time that residents have an opportunity to talk about any of these topics that have to do with the ordinance. We're getting more comments now. Lots of sticky notes going up. So thank you for your participation. Hopefully you find this fun to do. I know we did. You can change the color of them. You can put as much or as little information on there as you'd like. And I can read some of these. I just can't see it that well. They're kind of tiny. I don't know, Emily, if you can see it better. Oh, thank you. And then Emily was going to group these into like areas as well. How can residents in a COA or HOA use this service? That's the private hauler model. And I'm just going to read these out loud because I may not know the answers to some of these. Challenging for high-rise condo buildings. We implemented in 2015 and our recycling bins were overflowing, but the hauler told us we weren't producing enough to be worthwhile for them. Okay. Our COA uses a private company to pick up trash and dispose of our trash, but they do not pick up recycling. Most of us go to one of the drop-off locations to recycle. This should be mandated for the whole community, but with actual penalties for missed pickups. And how can we encourage businesses to participate in recycling? Current businesses are under the impression that they do not need to recycle because garbage is burned. Are y'all looking at existing multifamily complexes to use recycling? Okay, and that's for the private hauler model. And then the one provider per area model or the franchise model. This is the preferred option. I'm a full-time unincorporated and would like the same benefits as the city of St. Pete received today. And then Emily, if you'd, oh, thank you. This might be less expensive than having each resident or HOA hire their contractor. It might be a good idea to do this for both general trash and recycling. We're still on the one provider per area model. Trash haulers will give quantity discounts for multiple areas, but only if they're in the same account. The county can sign one contract to cover many homes and HOAs. How often would the recycling be picked up and will the bins have a lid? And then we have 3 to 4 different companies collecting in the neighborhood. There are trucks in the streets almost every day. One provider in the area with 1 to 2 days of pickup would be much more efficient. How can you regulate the rate for this so we're not overcharged? Okay. Thank you for all those comments.
Yep, all good comments.
Yeah. And then Emily, let's take a look on the other Jamboard option 1 and see if there's any new comments. Okay. I think the popcorn kernels are slowing down, so we're getting a little bit less comments said, but those are all good comments, and we're going to save all these and include that in the feedback that we got about the recycling question. Are you all contracting with recyclers based on location? Like if it's better for Hillsborough County to haul my recycling than Pinellas, can you make that happen? Okay.
Probably not.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think that was a really good. Oh, somebody is adding +1 to that comment. That one provider per area model is the preferred option. So thank you for that. Good use of the Jamboard, good use of the colors. And thank you all for trying that out with us. That was new and it seemed to work well for feedback. So we appreciate you participating in that.
All right, and we did get one comment about somebody was having a hard time accessing that and asked if it would be added into a poll, and we do have a poll. So poll number 2 is about your preference or thoughts on these 2 models, or if maybe you don't prefer either of those models, or maybe you're not sure. So I'm going to pop that up on the screen. So you can go ahead and answer that question.
And I'll read it just in case you, having trouble seeing or what have you. Which model would you support? Based on what you've heard, what would you support? Single choice. I support the private hauler model where households contract directly with a recycling service provider. Or I support one provider per area, the franchise model, where one company is contracted to provide recycling services and residents are billed. I do not support a universal recycling ordinance, or I'm not sure yet.
All right, just over 2/3 of everyone have participated, so I'll give it another second here. And even after this meeting is done, you can always feel free to reach out to us. Our shared inbox is recycle@pinellas.gov. So if you have any questions, you can email us there. And we also have our website, pinellas.gov/SW Ordinance for additional information. Okay, it looks like most everyone has participated. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So it looks like the majority of folks on the meeting tonight support the one provider per area or franchise model, where there's one company contracted to provide for that particular area. And then the residents are billed.
Can you
Eh.
show those, Emily?
Are they not being shown?
I'm not seeing it.
I see it. I'll take a screenshot, Paul, and share that with you.
Okay.
And then looks like 1 out of everyone who participated, or 4% of the audience, does not support a universal recycling ordinance. And 5 out of 26, or 19% of participants, are not sure yet. And we didn't have any support for the one private hauler model, where households contract directly. Alrighty, I'll stop sharing that. Thank you so much for your feedback, everyone, and thank you for participating in the Jamboard. Like Stephanie said, it was our first time using that, so I appreciate you trying that out with us. And we're going to continue on. If we don't have any other questions about that particular topic, let me just double check. All right, looks like we can get back to those in a second. Okay, Stephanie?
Yes.
All you.
So thank you, Emily. So we talked a little bit about recycling, and so I'm going to go in the order like we talked about with reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, and some of the ideas that we have for the ordinance. And we wanted to get your feedback, particularly on this particular area, which is low waste events. So I'll give you an example of what this would be. So let's just say that this pertains to county-owned properties, and it would be like a public park, like let's just say Fort DeSoto Park. Maybe there's an event organizer that is holding, say, a half marathon in a county park, and there's thousands of people that sign up and participate. And the event organizer today would pull a permit from the county and hold the event, and then the event participants create the waste that they're going to create. There's no necessarily plan for reducing that amount of waste. But if there were criteria for low waste events held on county property, and we're thinking that this could apply to large events, but we're open to your thoughts, then let's just say the event organizer would now be required to file some sort of plan. So there'd be some forethought of the waste that's going to be generated, maybe the vendors that are going to be there, what they're selling, and then down the line, what's going to happen to those materials? Are they going to be quality materials that could be recycled? Could they be composted? And then at the last resort, are they going to go in the garbage? So this is a way to really reduce waste and capture more recyclables, because you can imagine, maybe 10,000 people participating in an event. That's a lot of orange peels, a lot of banana peels. Maybe this will help us at our disposal facility take some of the pressure off and get materials like organics or good recyclables to go to be used in other ways and not necessarily come here. So that is a description about kind of what we're thinking, but we wanted to get your thoughts using a poll on what you think about low waste events.
I'm going to share this next poll. So as Stephanie said, poll number 3. This is also our final poll of the evening. It's on low waste events. So based on what you've heard, would you support the county setting standards for low waste events on county-owned property to reduce the amount of solid waste sent for disposal? And I'll give it another 20 seconds or so. All right, I'm going to close the poll and share the results. Looks like the majority of people on tonight's call would support low waste events on county-owned property, as Stephanie explained. And we're not 100% positive on what that would look like, but the idea is to reduce the amount of waste sent for disposal. One person wouldn't support that, and 2 people aren't sure just yet. So again, if you have any other questions or comments, feel free to put that into the chat or email us at recycle@pinellas.gov.
Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, thank you. Let me go to the next slide for you.
Okay, the next idea in the area of waste reduction would be the county taking a lead on setting the standard for creating an environmentally preferable purchasing policy or guide. This would be for use by county departments. So it would really pertain to the county. It could be used or mimicked or modeled by the municipalities. But an environmentally preferable purchasing guide isn't something that the county has right now. So this is a way that we could take the lead and make some inroads on creating less waste. Some of the things that could be done in this area would be maybe setting standards for, let's just say buying furniture with a percentage of recycled content. There's lots of things that can be done in the area. Working with vendors to, when, building or creating things, maybe let's just say they're building a building, diverting some of that material to be reused, like lumber or concrete, and not necessarily being disposed. And this is an area where there are some models in other communities that we could kind of mimic and take the lead on. It could be a whole host of things, but we don't have a specific thought or ideas on this, but we know that we've seen other communities do it, and we know that this is somewhere that the county can make strides. It is a strategy in our master plan. So we don't necessarily have a poll on this because we don't have specific examples, but we are open to your thoughts or your questions here. Let's see the next slide. Thank you, Emily. This is something that we know that folks are very interested in, and this would fall under the recycling or composting tier in the waste management hierarchy, but food waste collection and processing. You saw some of the numbers that Paul shared with you, that we have a lot of room to grow and take the lead here. The organics and yard waste that comes into our facility that could be turned into usable somethings. It could be compost, it could be other byproducts. It's not always composting, it could be anaerobic digestion. But food waste collection and processing, we know that there's about 20% of materials that come into our facility through our composition study that we found that we could do something else with the material and it doesn't have to be disposed. So there's areas where, businesses create the most amount of material. So this is like a future program, but we just wanted to let you know that we are looking at this through our master plan strategy, and we would want to put something about it in the ordinance, but it's like a future program. So we're thinking about a placeholder for this. We don't have anything specific, but we wanted to just bring that to your attention. And then construction and demolition debris. This isn't something that homeowners come into contact with too much, but maybe you're redoing a patio or, you're adding on or something to your home. Construction and demolition debris is basically lumber, concrete, asphalt, roofing shingles, drywall, and there are private entities that take construction and demolition debris. They generally recycle the concrete and the asphalt, but some of this material, like the metals, the wood, could be recycled. And that is a large component of materials that come into our solid waste disposal facility. Also, so we have talked to our municipalities and our private haulers and our county departments about this, about some ways that we could divert these good usable materials. And it's not all usable. Some of it, can't be reused, but some good usable materials like the metals and the woods, what else could be done with good usable construction and demolition debris? So that's an area that we're looking at too, because it is such a large component of what comes in here to the solid waste disposal complex that gets thrown away. So just wanted to put that on your radar that we're looking at that, not necessarily asking for specific input, but we just definitely wanted to bring you into that discussion. And then in the area of collection, we talked about, and Paul mentioned in the unincorporated areas, we have what's called open competitive collection. The county licenses the residential garbage haulers. I think we have about 8 of them. And the criteria for the licensed haulers is older. We wanted to refresh this area. We wanted to look at the roles and responsibilities section, the accountability section, the customer service. So we wanted to refresh and update that. We're certainly interested in and open to any comments or questions you have about that, especially those who live in the unincorporated areas. Feel free to put your questions in the chat. And then lastly, collaboration. The Solid Waste Technical Management Committee is a group made up of representatives from the municipalities, the county, and this is the advisory board to the Board of County Commissioners. They provide recommendations. Some of the things that they do are provide rate recommendations for the disposal fees. But this is a group that formed the framework for the Solid Waste Technical Management Committee. We'll call it TMC because it's a mouthful. We wanted to take a look at the structure and how that's set up because it was done so very long ago. It's a little bit outdated. And the reason we're bringing this up is it may affect you if you live in the incorporated areas. You have a representative on the technical management committee. If you're in a smaller community, like one of the beach communities, you might be in a group with, say, 6 other towns or cities, but you still have a representative of the Solid Waste Technical Management Committee. We wanted to make you aware of that. So that was more just to kind of inform, and you're always welcome to give any feedback on that. We do have a web page for the Solid Waste Technical Management Committee. If you're ever interested in what they do, you can go on there and look at the voting membership and some of the things that they've done in the past. So that was it for the ordinance overview. I'll turn that to Emily.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. We have a few questions in the Q&A box. Paul, did we want to go back to those 2 questions about mandatory recycling that we got earlier, just to kind of reiterate what we were talking about?
Yeah, so for the first one, would making recycling mandatory even for certain items help? So I think you can see as we've gone through the process, the answer would be yes. The more that we recycle, and I use that recycle smartly, I think if we move down this road, I think we'll learn how that we can, contractually standardize what we're recycling so that we make it convenient and simple for the residents and those that are recycling, that we're recycling, getting the biggest bang for our buck and reducing the amount of contamination that's actually, put into the bin. I know there are many people out there that want to recycle everything, and I applaud that. But when you're looking at it on a large scale and sending some of these materials to a MRF, there's just not a market for the MRF to provide these. So what we provide instead is, if you go to our where did you go tool on the solid waste webpage, you type in what that is, and we'll provide you with an option for you if you want to recycle those materials. It just maybe when we get down the road, we may not be able to recycle everything in a recycling bin. And that helps us. The better that we're able to standardize, it helps with the collection, it helps with the processing, and it maximizes the market for those materials. Now, how can we get this going? That's the purpose of tonight. If we get enough, participation and support to move this to the board for a recommendation, then they would look at making recycling mandatory, for residential curbside across the board. And we can do that. It's already happening in the incorporated areas. You're already paying for it, whether you recycle or not, it's already there. But in the unincorporated areas, other than Wellman, we don't have a franchise collection for garbage, or we don't have it anywhere mandatory for recycling. So that's where we're at tonight. We're hoping to get this off the ground, get it to the board, get their direction. And if it's something that they think that that's worth doing, then we'll be putting some more information and content around the narrative and bringing that back and engaging all the stakeholders at that point, so that we have a better idea of what this could look like, whether it's, what type of container, would be looking at the franchise option or the hauler option. And it would probably tie into this next question about, can we do this for the HOAs? Well, we can for the recycling side of things. If we make it mandatory, we would actually be engaging those and making sure that we're getting, the better bang for the buck as far as the recycling piece. We really cannot do that, as I mentioned earlier, for the unincorporated areas, for the garbage side of the house. We just can't do it because of the price to get involved in that game right now. But on the recycling side, it's certainly something that we would look at. And if we make it a universal recycling ordinance, it would include everybody in the county that would be single family, not multifamily, but single family. So I think that answers the two questions that were remaining there, Emily.
Yes, thank you. We also had a follow-up to the garbage islands. They just noted that they're called spoil islands. And then another question related to that, Google says the waste to energy facility produces 40,000 homes worth of generated electric. Who gets to use that? Paul, if you
Yeah,
want
I
to
think I
answer.
typed an answer back to both of those.
Oh, I didn't see it go through.
It left my board.
Oh, interesting. Well, the electricity that we produce at the waste to energy facility is brought back to the electrical grid, sold to Duke Energy, and that gets dispersed on the electrical grid. So we're not directly powering homes. It goes to Duke Energy. So Duke customers get to use that.
Correct.
All right. A key issue, as I understood that a key issue is having recycling capability available at a reasonable cost. With both models, how is that addressed?
So what I typed there, Emily, let me get down to that. So what I responded was, with the private hauler option, you would be paying that provider's rate, but you would have the option to contract with any private hauler that's providing service in your area. For the franchise option, there could be an economy of scale where a single provider would be providing to a larger area, which could result in keeping rates as low as possible. So that was my answer back to that question.
Okay, thank you.
I can take the next steps question, Emily.
Okay.
That's okay. So this participant said, I apologize, I may have missed it. What are the next steps for this team? So the next steps are gathering and summarizing the input, all the input we've gotten. We've gotten input at these public input meetings. We're also getting emails from folks and also on social media. So we're going to summarize that and present that to the Board of County Commissioners in mid-August. And then the board will provide direction based on that input. And then depending on what they direct this department to do, then we'll put some meat on the bones on the content of what the ordinance looks like, and then go back out to stakeholders for additional input. So you will be seeing this again. This won't be the last opportunity for input. And then we had a comment, be advised that Leilman is divided into east and west, with east on a contract and west with multiple haulers. Okay, thank you. And then we had a comment, y'all talked about the remaining landfill incineration capacity. What kind of monkey wrench would a hurricane throw? Are y'all considering that into the solid waste management solutions? Well, so as far as storm debris, if we're talking about, let's just say what happened in the south of us with Hurricane Ian. Before a storm season, the county municipalities work with the State Department of Environmental Protection to establish what we call debris management staging areas. So if we did have something like that happen here, the type of debris, maybe it's yard waste from blown trees, or maybe it's demolished buildings. It could be anything depending on the storm. That material would go to the debris staging areas, and then the contractors for those debris staging areas would manage that material, and it would not necessarily come here. The way we would get some storm debris is if, we didn't enact our contracts for debris movement. We might get a little bit extra yard waste. So. Cost of being mandated recycling is my number one concern as a resident and unincorporated. I agree it's important to recycle, but perhaps the county can subsidize the cost, as many of the municipalities do. In a municipality, they have to offer recycling, but the residents are not forced to pay for it. I feel I do my part with recycling at the drop-off locations. Well, thank you for that comment. Okay, next one. When we discuss how to swap out items that are not recyclable, can we discuss how we swap out styrofoam items for ones that are recyclable and compostable? Yes. Yes, and if you would like to reach out to recycle@pinellas.gov, our team is happy to provide any kind of recommendations that they've come across. I don't know if this is like business or personal, but we can provide you some additional information there. And then what if y'all charges a recycling fee of X dollars, whether or not someone recycles? That way, even if a household or a collection of households does not want to participate, they still pay a fee to offset the households that do want to recycle. Thank you for that comment. We'll include that in our input. Where does Feather Sound fall inside the TMC? If Feather Sound is unincorporated, which I think it is, then no, it's not.
I think it's part of St. Pete.
Okay.
I think they're incorporated or annexed by St. Pete.
Okay. One way to find out where you fall with TMC is you can use Emily, the My Neighborhood app. I know we can provide that maybe in the chat follow-up, but the county has an app where you can type in your address and it'll tell you whether you're incorporated or unincorporated. If you're unincorporated, then the city would be your representative. If you're unincorporated, then the county would be your representative. Would separating organic waste be beneficial? It could go to compost sites. So we are looking at potential future programs for the collection of organics, which would be food waste. We also have half of the cities are segregating and collecting yard waste. So that's also considered organic. So yes, it would be beneficial, and we are looking at future programs. We don't know if it would be composting or some other type of program or both, but that is a good comment. Clarifying the question is about who will take the recycled materials. I understand that's a bottleneck, or I understood that's the bottleneck. Maybe that's, I don't know if that's a capacity question, Paul, about MRFs.
You got to give it to me one more time because my question and answer is frozen. So
Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
seeing anything new come up.
All right, let me look and see here.
So if you want to read that to me one more time.
Yeah, so a key issue, as I understood, is having recycling capacity available at a reasonable cost. With both models, how is that addressed? And then the follow-up was, the question is about who will take the recycled materials. I understand that's a bottleneck. So you answered this gentleman's question,
Right.
but this is a follow-up.
Well, I mean, there's multiple MRF processors in our region, and we don't believe that there's a capacity issue right now as we know it to be. It may be with your provider that there could be, and they're having issues, or they may not have a contract with a provider. I'm not sure. But the county has been asked by the cities to determine whether they would get into or look at the feasibility of getting into constructing a government-owned and operated MRF. And as I mentioned earlier in this evening's presentation, some of the information that we're getting from our stakeholder engagements, we'll take that information to the board and kind of firm up whether we would do that, or possibly set a countywide contract with a private entity that has a MRF to take those materials and process and take them to market. I don't know which way we would be going, and it's kind of a follow-up to whether we would get into the mandatory recycling. So it's really, I mean, they're kind of dovetailed together, but it's too early in the process right now to give you a specific answer to your question, because I'm not sure how we're going to, one, if we're going to do it with mandatory recycling, and two, if we were, how it would be done as far as whether it would be a government MRF, continue with the private haulers that are out there that have these MRFs, or a countywide contract for MRF processing. Just don't know enough about that yet. And again, as we get further down the road, and it's something that we're looking to pursue, we would be able to do some more feasibility studies and look at the economies of scale and bring that information back to you all when we're engaging the stakeholders again.
Thank you, Paul. Another question, the disaster debris management sites still need final disposal solutions. What are your solutions? So the disaster debris management sites have, the county has several contractors that manage those and that dispose of the material, and the material does not come to the solid waste disposal complex. So that is the solution. The only thing where that might change is if the county decides not to enact its contract because the impact from the storm, was a certain level. Are you looking at how other counties successfully cut food waste? Countries. I would say that we do. We generally look at, we don't really narrow the scope, and whenever we look at the feasibility of any programs, we do benchmark. And we do look at good ideas. So we will check out that link that you shared from Food Heroes. So thank you for that. Just a suggestion to create incentives for county residents to recycle, such as discounts on services like electricity or similar. In Europe, citizens get paid per each bottle they bring to the recycler. Thank you for that comment. We have seen communities in Pinellas try the incentive program. There is some research that shows that if citizens are incentivized, that they think they're going to get something for recycling, that they may be less inclined to recycle when the incentive goes away. So we do try to focus the reason that people recycle on that's the right thing to do, then it's important to the solid waste management system. But I understand that in Europe, citizens get paid. I understand that glass, that's how glass is managed. And I think it's a great way to reuse bottles. So thank you for sharing that. More recycling locations. Every park should have one. The county does operate 15 recycling drop-off centers throughout unincorporated areas. We are looking at certainly expanding in the mid-south area and the Seminole area. So thank you for that. And I'm glad you appreciate those centers. We take great pride in those. Have you considered providing composting bins to single-family homes or even HOA communities? That worked well for us in Scotland. We had a greater than 98% of households composting at home using bins provided by the government. I think now, as far as unincorporated areas, IFAS and the county extension office might be a good resource or go-to for that. Some of our municipalities do have programs. We can reach out to our extension office and see if they're offering that program. There was some talk about it, but I'm not sure where that is, but we'll follow up on that. And then we had, thank you, the fact that it will be addressed if mandatory recycling is the issue I hoped was on the table. So thank you. And then the DDMS, disaster debris management waste, has to go somewhere. Is it going within the state or outside the state? The lead, and not that this is necessarily, but the Department of Public Works is the manager for those contracts. And I'm not sure what the answer is, because I think it depends on the storm and which contractors are activated. And I don't know, it would probably be storm specific. So you could always reach out to our Public Works team or just generally chat with the county on our website, and they can get you to the right person if you want to get more information about that. And then I'd rather not have a roll of paper towels be thrown at me when I ask for help from the feds after a hurricane. Okay. Well, thank you so much for everyone's comments. Emily, did you have any raised hands?
No, I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for.
We just got
we-
one more in the Q&A box.
Okay.
Can we get more recycling bins at our beaches and education for our tourists?
So our department does provide recycling bins, the 32-gallon blue bins for our partners, including municipalities. If you wanted to share information with us at recycle@pinellas.gov, we'd be interested to know a little bit more about your request. And we would like to hear your ideas about reaching out to tourists, because we're always interested in expanding that message. And then were there any particular areas that you thought needed more bins? We do have about over 400 bins at for the Beach Park Recycling Program, but we want to hear what your thoughts are about that. Okay. And then Emily, I don't know if you have any more questions. I can, oh, okay.
Nope, all you.
Okay, so how your input will be used. I talked about this a little bit, but we'll be gathering and summarizing the input that you provided to us, no matter how you provided it to it. It could have been direct email. It could have been you messaged us or you commented on social media. It could be at these meetings. We'll be presenting that information to the board in mid-August, and then the board will be giving us direction about how to proceed. And then we'll continue to develop these ideas and then bring this back out to stakeholders. and you will be seeing us talk about the ordinance again in the future. In county buildings, we have another question. What is the rate of recycling versus disposal? That program is run by a different department. If you wanted to reach out to us at recycle@pinellas.gov, we could put you in contact, but I don't have the answer for that. So for staying in touch and after this meeting, you could always message us at recycle@pinellas.gov. We monitor that shared inbox every workday, so Monday through Friday, and we will get you a response or let you know we're working on a response within 24 hours. You can get updates at pinellas.gov/SW ordinance. We plan to keep that website updated with our latest updates, so you can always go back there to see what's new. And then our next public input meeting is in person. It's Wednesday night at 6 p.m. at Harbor Hall in Palm Harbor. And we do ask you to register on Eventbrite if you would please, and that helps us know how many people are planning to come so we can be ready. And that was our last slide, and we wanted to tell you how much we appreciated your comments and questions. We hope that you found this valuable, informative, and you can stay in touch with us. And we look forward to the next time we can talk with you.